Hi everybody, for those of you that saw the last video of my channel, I unboxed this knife here. It is the Heinnie Haynes exclusive version of the CRKT Pilar, and it's a knife that I very much like. Unfortunately though, however, the detent strength was quite weak, and by that I mean hitting the back of the knife made it close quite easily, which is arguably a safety thing. Realistically, you hold this knife choked up here, but a lot of people I think would have appreciated a stronger detent in there, and I was one of those people. Now that I have already had this knife apart and modified it a little bit, it certainly doesn't close as easily. It will still close like that if you hit it off something hard enough, but it certainly won't close as easily as before. So that's what I'm going to show you how to do today, if that's something that you're interested in. However, if you are going to do this, do so at your own risk, of course. I am just someone on YouTube, and I'm not going to take responsibility if you take apart your own knife and break it. So it's quite an easy thing to do. We only need two drivers. We need a T6 and a T8. Of course, we need something to spin the T6 and T8 with, and I'm going to try and use these tire levers to wedge up the lock bar, but failing that, I have this big flathead screwdriver here. So it's really that simple. We are going to be unscrewing this knife from the back side, of course, because it has a non-tooled show side pivot. And also that works out quite well because it means we get this pocket clip off, which means the knife lies flat on the surface like it is just now. So I'm going to take out these handle screws to start with, chuck them in this little magnetic metal dish. There we go. And swap over to my T8 to unscrew the pivot. Why the handle screws were in T8 as well, we may never know, but they're not. And the knife, as you saw there, is just going to pop itself open. So this knife on the inside is really quite simple. What you're going to see here is we have a blade, two Teflon washers, a stop pin, which is the biggest pin in the backside about the inside of this knife when you're trying to reassemble it. And on each side of the handle scales, you'll see this piece here, which is sprung. And there's a little ball on the end, and these two sprung pieces with balls on the end correspond to the two holes in here, and they are essentially your open and closed detent. Now, because these are on both sides, it means you do not have the force of a lock bar pushing on one side of the blade, which means this knife was dead centered when I got it, and you don't really have to work to get this knife centered, which is of course rather nice. So what I'm going to do is try to wedge up these just a little bit, and you don't want to do this too much, especially not if, like me, you've already done it a little bit. But I essentially just want to bend these up just a little bit, and I'm not really looking to make too much of a difference to my knife doing this because, like I said, I've already done it. I'm mostly doing this to show you guys how I did it, so that'll probably be enough for me. If you look how bent up my two detent balls are now, and if you're doing this on your own knife, you will see that yours are probably going to sit considerably closer to the respective sides than mine currently do. So to put this knife back together, what I've found the best way to do it is to put the blade on first. So one Teflon washer, not both. Blade, you want to push the blade down, holding the detent down as well. Then you want to take your stop pin, which, like I said, is the most fiddly part of this knife, and you want to get it balanced in that hole, just like that. Next, the other Teflon washer, and now keeping pressure on the blade here the whole time, I'm going to put the handle scale on and push, and you really do have to push it down because you're compressing one of those detent bars which you've just bent up. Then I'm going to go ahead and put the pivot screw in to hold it all together, while keeping this continuous pressure on the side of the knife. There we go, now we're getting there. We're not quite getting there yet. Hold on. Yeah, there we go. There we go. And what you just heard there was me backing off the pivot screw until it falls into the thread nicely, which is something I recommend doing. It saves you cross-threading the screw, essentially, which is always nice. And I'm just going to put in the two handle screws. I'm going to do the same thing again, going to back them out until they pop in. There was the pop. and screw it down, and the last handle screw, back it out until it pops. There we go, and screw it in. Nice and easy. Now I'm probably going to need to adjust my pivot a little bit because I've probably done it too tight. Yep, that certainly feels a bit too tight. When you're adjusting your pivot on this knife, I find it really quite easy to do because no matter how loose you get it, apparently I have got it a little bit too loose, it more or less remains centered enough. The pressure on both sides of the blade here should be more or less equal as long as you bent them up equally. Bent the detent bars, I should say, up equally. So you probably don't need to worry about your centering. What you do want to try and do is eliminate blade play. And what I'm going to be trying to do here is get the action, essentially pivot as loose as I can while having no blade play, which is what I seem to have landed on there. And yeah, that's considerably stronger than it was before. Certainly considerably stronger than it was new, a bit stronger than it was at the start of this video. Which in my opinion is something this knife should have been from the start. It's a bit safer, doesn't feel... Before when I gripped the knife in this position and I put any pressure on the back of the knife, it would want to close. And it still does if I push on the back of the knife, but it doesn't want to close now, which is nice. Yep, so in my opinion, that's how I would have liked the knife to come from the factory. That's going to be it for today. Hope this helps somebody. See you later.